Well, right now, one of the key issues confronting the globe are certainly international economic issues. There's a great deal of concern about economies, whether it's in the United States, Europe, and even Asia is not remote from this. So with the concern about economic factors, and then also another significant factor, and that is the factor of energy dependence. In the United States, many Americans are very concerned about the fact that we've gotten our gas from countries that have used it as a kind of instrument, and we don't want to be beholden to other countries in which you have volatile political situations. So as a result, looking at those two factors, I would say that specifically some of the kinds of changes that have taken place and are taking place, one is that the United States is not interested in being energy dependent. It's looking at its own resources and how to most effectively develop them. There's the issue of the development of the Keystone Pipeline with Canada. There's been some debate in it in our country. My own view is I do think that this is a direction that we should embrace because we don't want to be dependent. We do want to have relationships with our close neighbors and also to draw upon even our own resources. The question about drilling, offshore drilling. There's another factor here, and that is really taken hold, and that's the issue of natural gas. More and more Americans are very focused on the fact that natural gas is a clean source of energy and how it's one that is in abundance. And it's a path that we should be going down more on. When I worked at the State Department, I remember years ago, we had a fleet of cars that were not run by natural gas. The interesting thing now is the fleet of cars at the State Department are run by natural gas. These are the kinds of changes which we are witnessing. Well, here the issue is that there has to be diversity and diversification of energy sources. I think anyone in this business knows that there really isn't a single silver bullet. There might be areas that might be more predominant than others and more relevant than others, but having said that, I think that all energy sources are on the table in this case. And we have to be aware, first of all, the United States, for example, is a country that is coal abundant. There have been many who have looked at trying to deal with clean coal sources and looking at avenues towards that end. And the reason for that is because of just the reality that, as you make changes, you have to also deal with what you have. And how do you make that more environmentally palatable? So the second part is there's been a lot of technological innovation in many sectors. Everything from carbon sequestration, literally extracting carbon and finding a place for storing it, whether it's in seabed or whether it's in a land base. There's also hydrogen. Very interestingly enough, for example, out in California, the California fuel cell partnerships, the United States is collaborating with other automotive industries, our Ford and General Motors collaborating with Toyota and Hyundai, where they're looking at how do hydrogen-powered cars run. There's the issue also of nuclear. There certainly is a segment in the United States of those who advance and support looking at nuclear. It's a clean form of energy. And then there are renewables, another area where, depending on where you are in the United States, renewables may fit in. Natural gas is also one of the areas that certainly is very much embraced by many. We've seen a lot of changes towards that end. Certainly in terms of our fuels and sources of energy. And then I'd also add in the mix that what's also important is looking at energy efficiency and how do we impact energy efficiency right at the beginning of, say, the development of communities, the building of certain types of government buildings or embassies. So my point, simply put, is that you have to have a diversified panoply of sources and not look at just one approach. Some dominate more than others, but we need to really be looking at how we can make ourselves less dependent. You know, there are a number of interesting shifts taking place in Asia today in the way in which they are looking at energy. First, I'd start with the fact that the United States has a number of very good partnerships with many Asian countries, and in many areas that are growth areas and areas that are dependent on the development of technologies and putting monies into research and innovation. For example, the area of hydrogen. The United States has collaborated with countries like Japan and Korea over hydrogen-based cars. Another area, for example, is, of course, the area of energy efficiency. This is an interesting area because we find in the United States there are a number of local communities, and these communities are linking their urban planning to actually the area and the issues relevant to energy cost-effective approaches and energy efficiency. And interestingly enough, countries like Korea, for example, have launched a major effort that's focused on how to bring about change at the community level. Also, a number of other countries in Southeast Asia are also beginning to look at this. And the fundamental reason why is they're looking at how to be more cost-effective, how to bring clean sources of energy and lower-cost sources of energy into their communities, and also, in a certain way, how to become more self-sufficient by taking these measures and these steps. I'd also add that a lot of research is also being put into another area, and that's carbon sequestration. If you go over to Australia, for example, Australia has set up an institute, and that institute has focused on carbon sequestration. The United States has had a carbon sequestration leadership forum. Many Asian countries have been part of that. So I would say, you know, in looking at what the trends are, I think you see, first of all, a lot of not only bilateral partnerships, but also multilateral partnerships, which heretofore hadn't necessarily taken place, a greater collaboration in research and innovation, and then very significantly, many Asian countries are very focused on this issue of what could be done at the community level and how that could possibly be used as a model for other places in the globe, and how they could bring to bear changes and new models of energy efficiency, looking at windows, building codes, you know, you name it, but all aspects of what comes to bring a community together.